Dr. Starr is going to take us through the biology of stingless bees. Let me get your stuff up here.
Okay.
All right. So without no further ado,
Ready?
Dr. Starr.
Okay. Shane, go to the first slide, please. Now, normally the references come at the end, but there's a reason why I'm going to give them to you at the beginning. The best single work book-length work on the biology of stingless bees is this one by Christophe Gluja. Unfortunately, I don't have a hard copy, so I can't show it to you. There is a shorter, much shorter one by Gabriel Mello, and it's in this book, which I will now pass around. So you see the reference there. Don't let that one fall on your head. The best single treatment of the keeping of meliponiculture is this book by Paulo Nogueira Neto, which I'm afraid will be inaccessible to some of you. I was thinking of arranging for a translation into English, but I pretty much dropped that project. So for some of you, this will remain inaccessible. There is a shorter version, just a small, a very, very short treatment of meliponiculture by Javier Quesada Ewan and co-author, and that also is in the book that it's probably best not to get hung up on this. On the book that is now passing around, I put the pages on the front. In addition, what I didn't reference is in that same encyclopedia is an entry on the nests of stingless bees. Okay, Shane, let's go. Now, bees are a distinctive group of wasps that have shifted from utilizing prey, such as spiders and insects, as their food source, their protein source for their larvae, and instead have shifted to pollen and nectar. Pollen is is protein rich. Pollen supplements for humans are probably useless because it's not known that we can digest them. But this shift in the main food source for the brood accounts for the peculiarities, the distinctive features of bees as a whole. There are an estimated 20,000 species of bees in the world, all kinds of bees. And one of these is known as the Corviculate bees. Now, this and I think one other word I've written down for you so that you can see the spelling. And the word comes from the pollen basket or corbicula that is on the hind legs. So that here we see a couple of pollen baskets, and you can see there's a flattened area on the tibia of the hind leg, and they pack pollen into it, and then there are spines that hold it in place, or in this case you can see these curving bristles that hold it in place. Now that's not the only thing that sets the Corviculate bees apart, but it's the most obvious. It's the one, if you see a bee and you wonder if it's a Corviculate bee, look for the pollen baskets. So this is the most easily recognized feature, and it is found in females only. We'll come back to the reason for that in a little bit. So that when you see a mass of bees flying about and you wonder if they're Corviculate bees, then look for the pollen baskets. There are 4 distinct groups of Corviculate bees, and we're going to take a look at each of them. And in each of these you can see the corbicula. The orchid bees, or euglossines, are restricted to the New World tropics. And they are mostly strictly solitary, with some social habits, but with not, none of them is highly social. None of them builds substantial colonies. Bumblebees are a group that is known of what are known as primitively social, which means that they have a caste system. They have a distinct queen, but the queen is not very different. Is not physically very different from the workers. We're going to come back to these two terms, queen and worker, in a little bit. So that these are primitively social. Honeybees, as I'm sure you're all aware, are highly social. They build large colonies. They have a complex caste system. The queen is physically distinct from the workers. And there are other things that set honeybees apart. And finally, the ones of interest today, the stingless bees. The stingless bees have a level of social complexity comparable to that of honeybees. So that they are also highly social. They've got a physically distinct queen and a well-defined division of labor within the colony. The stingless bee, there are about, I should mention, honey. You may have heard some bees around here referred to as bumblebees. In fact, we have no bumblebees here. What you have been, what some people mistake for bumblebees are ones of about the same size, and they move around noisily, those are carpenter bees. Bumblebees are mostly found in the northern hemisphere, with some penetration into the South American continent. The honeybees comprise 11 species, as far as we know, and the honeybees, except for one species, which is the one which is introduced here, they are restricted to South and East Asia. So our familiar honeybee, the western honeybee, is native to most of Africa and most of Europe. That's a good summary of its range. But there are none that are native to the New World. The stingless bees are, of course, so called because the venom apparatus is so highly reduced that they can't sting. We're going to come back to what they can do to you, but none of them can ever sting you. Okay, let's look at the stingless bees of Trinidad and Tobago. And in some of these, the exact identity is not entirely certain. So I've just put genera. I would say for many of them, and I see I've misspelled plebea. That I there does not belong. Some of them we know perfectly well who they are. Some of them it's not quite certain. But the genera are well defined. And as you see, we have 9 species as far as we know in Trinidad, and there are 2 species in Tobago. And David will say more about the keeping and the features of some of these. There are about 550 known species of stingless bees. The true total is estimated at between 600 and 700. So as insects go, they're relatively well known. They're relatively well worked out. They are found throughout the tropics, but it is notable that there's a great deal of variation among regions. So in West Africa, I found just 1 species. In Southeast Asia, I found several, but they were all pretty much alike. By far, they are most diverse in the New World tropics. About 3/4 of the total species are found in our region. So we're really really very fortunate in that respect. They're also more diverse at the genus level, not just the number of species, so that they differ much more markedly among the species than do those found in the Old World tropics. The smallest one, which I guess David, Nano Tribuna is the smallest we have, I believe, and it's about it's a little smaller than a housefly, or significantly smaller than a housefly. The biggest ones we've got are of the genus Melipona, and they're about the size of a honeybee. And this is just within Trinidad and Tobago. So the overall size variation is quite a bit greater than that. So, what do stingless bees eat? As a rule, like other bees, they visit flowers to collect pollen and nectar, and they turn some of the nectar that they collect into honey. Now, honey is chemically altered, concentrated nectar that resists fermentation at normal temperature. So your honey at home, whether it's from stingless bees or honeybees, if you keep the lid on, it'll keep forever. If you don't allow it to attract water and ferment, it'll keep forever. So it makes sense that when they store honey in their nests, then it's for later. Honey is the main energy source of the bees. There's a great deal of variation in how much they store, and I expect that'll be a key part of David's discourse, that some of them store a lot of honey, some of them store so little that it's not really worthwhile extracting it, except maybe for fun. They also come to honeydew. Honeydew is an excretory product of aphids and related insects because they are taking in sap. Sap is very poor in amino acids, but relatively rich in sugars. And so they're excreting it all the time, extracting the thin amino acids from it, and excreting the sugar water, which many insects very much prize as an energy source. So that's another source. It's known as honeydew. That's another source of sugar water. And they also come to sweat. You may have noticed this if you walk in the woods that are around here. If you're sweating, which I hope you do, it's a problem if you don't, then sometimes they'll come and they'll land on you and they will drink your sweat. Well, there's a good reason for that. You know what sweat has? It has salts. And think of animals in the wild. Salts can be quite hard to come by. So they're very much interested in your sweat. And my advice is to just let them have it. Sometimes they get, and wasps that come for sweat get a little more aggressive and they try to take out a piece of skin. That's something I prefer not to tolerate. And there are a few that also come to carrion, dead meat. So that I don't know, maybe David will correct me on this, but as far as I know, none of our native species here comes to carrion. But in other areas some do. Now, the genus Lestremelita likewise utilizes pollen and nectar, utilizes them as food in the usual manner, but they don't collect it from the flowers. These are robber bees, and they go out and they invade other stingless bee colonies and take away their sources, and they give off this distinctive chemical. I don't know if it sort of smells like citronella to me. I've got a Lestremelita colony right on the side of my house, and every now and then I'll be out in the porch area working at my machine, and I'll smell this citronella-like smell, and I realize that the Lestremelita are out raiding, and they're using that as a communication method. Now, a returning forager, this is something you've probably heard of from honeybees, a returning forager who finds a promising flower patch almost automatically conveys information about it to her nestmates, because she is, other bees are unloading, she's delivering her pollen or nectar to the others. In so doing, they smell it, they taste it, and they may get an idea that this kind of flower is blooming well. She may also give an indication of the richness of the patch of flowers she's found by the vigor that with which she moves around in the nest and delivers up her load, as if that's a manifestation of her enthusiasm. And in some species, she can go further in communicating the location of the patch. So, as far as we know, no stingless bee has what you might call symbolic communication, distance and direction communication that you probably know from honeybees. But in some species, what they do is a forager who has found something that's really good will go toward it, depositing droplets of pheromone on vegetation. So it's kind of the same thing as ants do with their odor trails, except that she just does it, sporadically, and the nestmates can therefore, she can direct them right to the food source. Okay, now what about colony size? It's very variable. So Trigona amalthea, known as the pagone, is that correct? That's what we call it here. Okay, can reach 20 or 30,000 individuals, adults, in a colony, and some other species may even have 100,000. But there are some in which there are seldom more than 200 individuals in a colony. So there's a great deal of variation, as I mentioned, in individual body size, also in the colony size, and we'll go over some other sources of variation. So this is one way in which stingless bees are quite different from honeybees. Honeybees, they're not all the same. Not all 11 species are the same, but they're relatively uniform compared with stingless bees. Now, the subject of caste. We refer to we use this term to refer to the different jobs that different clusters of individuals have within the colony. Each colony normally has a single egg-laying female. She's the mother of everybody else, and she's known as the queen. Okay? Now I see your lips moving. That's good. You're with me on this. And then there are a great many non-reproductive females, and they are known as, oh, you let me down, workers. Okay? I mean that's fairly obvious. They're workers, and so they are tasked with all of the colony maintaining business of the colony, except for reproduction. Now, what about the males? Well, males are not very different from the females. The easiest way I found to tell them apart is by the lack of a pollen basket. Sometimes when I wondered whether these were males or females, rather than going into looking at the genitalia or other details, I just looked to see whether they got a pollen basket. Well, males are only sporadically found, only in certain seasons in the colony. And males just do one thing. You probably know some guys like that. So that they have no role, as far as I know, in any species. They have no role in the colony maintaining tasks. They certainly don't forage. I'm not aware of any observations that they tend to the brood or tend to the queen. And so that I mentioned earlier that they've got no pollen baskets. Well, now you see why. Now, stingless bees, like most social insects, are not nomadic. They stay right in place for most or all of the life of the colony. So right in a fixed place. And some of them build exposed nests. Here we've got Partamona, which builds a relatively exposed nest in many cases. So sometimes up on a tree, you will see what looks like, it kind of looks like a cow pie actually. You know, this excrescence on a branch or on the trunk. And it's got an internal part as well in a tree hollow. But it's relatively exposed. And there are some others that build relatively exposed cavities, which they then modify to suit. In every case, the nest is very tight. So if you were to open this or any other, now it's not mine, so I'm not inviting you to open it, but if you were to open any of them, what you would find is that the whole chamber is sealed, except for the entrance tube. Let's go to some entrance tubes. Shane, yeah, okay. So here we see a couple of entrance tubes, and I mean this one, I looked at this, and just from this entrance tube, I said, okay, that's Partamona. No question about it. And in most cases, if you know the local stingless bees, you can tell and you can distinguish the species when you come upon it just by the entrance tube, which tends to be very distinctive, which is convenient. If you're out in the woods and you're looking for colonies of stingless bees, then the easiest thing to do is to look for entrance tubes. And you will, if you're conversant with your species, you can tell who they are right away. The basic, yes, please, Shane, when you're ready. The basic construction material for nests is cerumen. Now you're aware that honeybees build, modify their nests and build the comb with wax, and which they secrete. Well, stingless bees also secrete wax, but they tend to move it. Now, is that one coming to me for sweat? I'll try not to disturb her. Stingless bees mix their wax with resins, or as the Canadians would say, rosins, into a substance known as cerumen. They can use just about any kind of sticky material. It's mostly plant resins. But I once in Southeast Asia saw stingless bees. Okay, now is this one coming to my arm? You're welcome here. Coming to some tar at a road construction site. Makes sense. And so they undoubtedly took it back and mixed it with wax to make cerumen. The within nest components, within the nest, the chamber is divided up into components that are kind of like rooms in a building. So here we see a couple of examples of that. There is the central chamber with its brood and food storage cells. And so here we see the brood cells, and in this one, the larger storage pots for honey and pollen. In this one, they're not so different, but there are readily recognizable brood cells. And there's a great deal of variation in the nest architecture of stingless bees. So that in some of them, the brood cells are just a cluster, kind of like grapes, kind of like a batch of grapes. In some of them, they build an orderly comb, as we see here. And you see in this case, this illustrates fairly well, that the comb is surrounded by an envelope of cerumen with the storage pots outside. There's just a taste of the variation in the nest architecture. So what is the nest for? The main function of the nest is not just a place to hang out. That much is clear. The main function, its main function is as a facility for production of new bees. So you can think of the nest as effectively being a factory. But stingless bees are surrounded by natural enemies. And there are which would like to get at them, to eat those juicy brood, to take the honey and honey and pollen. So that has to be defended, and it is defended very, very vigorously. So that the excuse me, the metaphor that is used of the social insect colony is that of a fortified factory. So it's a factory for production, but it's defended on all sides. Now, the main natural enemies on a daily basis are ants, and so that it makes sense that it should be tight. That the only entrance is the entrance tube, the single entrance tube, only way to get in, and that this is consistently guarded. There's somebody on guard all the time, except in those species, such as our Nano Tribuna, which habitually, in the nighttime, when they're not going to be out foraging, close the entrance tube. In some also, the entrance tube is surrounded by a sticky layer, which is hard for ants to cross. I mentioned that they have secondarily lost the stinger. Can't sting you. But that doesn't mean that the colony is at the mercy of any large animal that would like to penetrate and overcome it. There are guards at the entrance, as I mentioned, and those that make exposed nests tend to defend rather vigorously by physical means. So that if this were an active nest right here, by disturbing it, as I'm doing now, I would probably get a bunch of them coming out, and they would they fly at me, they bite me. I mean, one stingless bee biting you, not a big deal. But if 150 do it, it can put you to flight. And especially with Trigona amalthea, the pegone. I mean, they are vigorous in defending. And I have been put to flight a number of times by those. And I don't know what the secret to managing them is. I hope David will enlighten us on that. So that they can bite, and they tend to go for the hair and the eyes. I mean, that's really nasty. But they know how to do that. Now, stingless bee colonies tend to be very long-lasting. Typically, they last for years. I've got an Alestra melita colony on the side of my house that has been there since I moved in 22 years ago. I don't know how long it was there before, but I found some others with Alestra melita where I've asked people, when did you first notice this? And typically the answer is, it was many years ago, and they may name the number of years. Well, they can do that, the colonies can do that, can persist for a long time in a good place by requeening. So if the queen dies or loses vigor, then the colony typically can replace her with a new queen. However, in biological terms, to be successful, is not just a matter of persisting and growing. They have to reproduce. The colony has to reproduce. So you can think of reproduction as being at the colony level. They must found new colonies. And in stingless bees, as in honeybees, but unlike in bumblebees and orchid bees, the unit of replication is not the individual female, but it is the colony, which is to say that they replicate the colony by means of a swarm. And swarm here has a rather specific meaning. It's not just a mass of flying insects, it is a queen attended by a whole lot of workers. And so that a new queen flies out with about half of the workforce, and they fly to a new location, and they establish a new colony there. Now, and in time they do some building, and in time the queen starts laying eggs, and they're up and running, and it may be as successful as the mother colony. Now, I mentioned that the workers fly out with a new queen. Now, those of you who know your honeybees think, well, isn't it the old queen who flies out? Isn't it the mother queen who flies out? Well, the answer in this case is no, because in stingless bees, unlike in honeybees, the mother queen becomes distended with eggs. She's not flight worthy anymore, so she can't fly out. So she stays behind, and it's a new queen that flies out. What this also means, because the queen of an active colony is not flight worthy, is that absconding, the whole colony just taking off and moving to a new area, is almost unknown in stingless bees. Happens, I think I can only recall ever having seen one report, one description of an absconding event. Now, if you've kept honeybees, you know that this is a problem with honeybees. If you see a honeybee colony someplace, and it's a wild colony, well, you come back in a month or maybe even just a week, it might not be there. It happens very often. You can't count on them staying there. This is a problem for honeybee keepers the world over, and especially the tropical honeybees really like to abscond. They're like some people, but stingless bees almost never abscond, and that explains why you see one colony in the same place for years and years and years. Now, let's consider the matter of phylogeny. It's well established that the Corviculate bees as a whole are a natural monophyletic group. So that means that they are all more closely related to other Corviculate bees than any of them is to any other bee. It is also well established that each one of the 4 groups that I showed you of Corviculate bees is a monophyletic group. But what about the relationships between the 4 different groups? Which ones are more closely related, which is, say, more recently related than the others are? So it's like, you're more related to your siblings than you are to your cousins, because you have more recent common ancestors. Same thing. Okay? Well, this question has received a great deal of attention. Final slide, please. Okay? And here we see 2 answers to that question. These are known as cladograms, and I think they're probably self-explanatory to many of you, but maybe not. So on the left, we see the traditional view. And this was first set forth by Charles Darwin. So it's been around a long time and is well supported by the physical features of the bees themselves. So according to this, here's the position of the common ancestor. The common ancestor divided, and one side became the solitary orchid bees. The other became the common ancestor of all of the social bees. Then this divided again, and one branch became the primitively social bumblebees, and the other became the highly social, with large colonies, complex social organization, stingless bees and honeybees, and then these split into two. So that's one very respectable hypothesis. But there is an alternative that is based largely on molecular characters. And in that one, as you see here, that's the one you see on the right, the first division is between the honeybees and everybody else. And then the second division, pretty much similar to the other one. So the solitary orchid bees and these social bees here, dividing into the primitively social bumblebees and the highly social stingless bees. Well, a lot of effort has been devoted to solving this problem. Why? I mean, why would you go to all that trouble? It's an interesting problem, but is it really worth a lot of trouble? Well, the reason is because the pattern implies the process. If this is the correct cladogram, and by correct I mean exactly that, reflecting what actually happened in the past. If this is the correct cladogram, then we had there's a very fairly obvious stepwise progression from the solitary ancestor to the presumably primitively social common ancestor here to the highly social common ancestor here. If not, if this is the correct cladogram, there are some others that have been set forth, but these are the two main ones. Then what it means is that highly organized societies evolved twice in bees. Okay, so they evolved independently in the honeybees and the stingless bees. Now, this it may sound a bit far-fetched, but in fact, in my view, there are as many differences between stingless bees and honeybees as there are similarities. So they're both at a comparable level of social organization, but there are plenty of differences, and we've gone through some of the differences. Okay, well that's the end of my prepared remarks.
How far does the stingless bees forage from the hive?
How far do they forage? Well, that also is very variable. I am not satisfied that the question has been solved well. There are really two questions there, and sometimes these are conflated in the research. One is the maximum distance. In other words, how far can they go and still find their way back? And that's fairly easy to test. In my view, that's fairly meaningless, because what you really want to know is how far do they normally go? Well, a great deal of variability. I would say if you say roughly 1 kilometer, you're probably not too far off, but not with a great deal of variation among species. So I mean, what that means, I think, if what you're getting at, and I hope David will comment on this, if you've got your own bee yard, how close must you be to good food sources? And okay, that's what you were wondering. It just occurred to me now. So I mean, right here would be a dandy place, because look at all these flowering plants all over the place. The bees wouldn't have any trouble. If you're in the middle of chaguanas, or any other swamp, then it could be somewhat more difficult. But I mean, you want to have your bee yard near forest is good, or near crops that are not heavily sprayed. Excuse me, I'm past 70 years old. Please don't whisper.
Sorry. If you look over there, so near KC confectionery, they always have they leave some of their sweet something out for the garbage, and there's always a nest of bees there. That's not good food for them.
Oh, sure, fruits.
Or you have a snow cone cart.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean,
or is there a distinction between good food and what not so good, or is all sweet good?
well, I must admit I hadn't really thought of that question, but the probable answer is if you put out bad stuff, they won't touch it. That's probably the answer. But yeah, I would say you put out. I mean, if I've got some fruits out on my patio, and the bees are coming to it, then yes, that's good food for them.
There's a backup question to that, Starr. Maybe what she's getting at is so the food source that they feed on will influence the honey.
Oh yes, yeah. That's well, I'm glad you asked David that question. He'll be ready.
Starr is a professor. I have learned. Okay. I'll tell you how I got into Stingless Bees, and I'll just real touch. Growing up in Woodbrook, from a little boy, they had 2 Stingless Bee hives in my yard. One was a pig one, Trigona amalthea, and one was Petit Angel, Frisium aletta nigra. Later on, I knew we pulled honey from the pig one hive. The Petit Angel hive was in a drill pipe post for a garage, so you could never get it. Okay? But several times I would rip, some of the older houses had those sliding windows that were counterweighted. They had a counterweight, just slide up, and the post to the side of the window was actually hollow with the counterweight, while the pig one hive was in there. So I get in trouble periodically, take a claw hammer and bust it open, and then go and tell my parents, you'll have to fix that. Look, right? That was the start. Got older, and then I damaged my back, and for 2 years I was bedridden, waiting for surgery. At that point in time, I did a lot of searching on the internet, okay, on the academics of stingless bees. And I realized it was all, I knew it was kept, stingless bees were kept in Trinidad by the Amerindians, and then in the early days, they were kept by East Indians that came here. When the Spanish first came here, they didn't like the stingless bee honey because it smoked. Because it wasn't, not the honey, sorry, the wax. The stingless bees incorporate resin into the wax, and it smoked. And the Spanish wanted a lot of wax for their candles in their churches. And that is what really brought in the Spanish bees here first, Apis mellifera from Europe. And it kind of then died out, because the Apis mellifera were making more honey, right? And in those days, the Spanish bees were like the Italian bees. They were very, very docile. I remember as a boy, my uncle in Bayshore had several hives in his backyard, and he would handle them in a old butter slippers, a short pants, and a Broadway cigarette, right? And I never saw him, he was never stung, right? But now, there is the African bees here. There's a slight more interest going back to it, and they have a few guys that have inherited hives down through the years from their great-grandfather. They come down, and now it reach a point where they don't know what to do with it. It's just an heirloom. Okay? So during those 2 years, I did all my research online, catching my skin, using Google Translate to translate Brazilian Portuguese, which half the time don't translate properly because they have a lot of Amerindian words in Brazilian Portuguese. And then when I had my operation, I started doing practical work. I went out, I got hives. There was no one to go to. There was maybe 2 people or 3 people in Trinidad had them, they didn't really know how to split them. They would just know how to take out the honey. So if they inherited 3 boxes, they had 3 boxes, and that was it. So trial and error, and I got good with a particular bee. And that is why I am here now. There was a lecture a long time ago, several years ago at UE, and they contacted a gentleman in Tobago who keeps bees, and he had done some work with a Dutch professor that came down there to study one of our stingless bees. And they contacted him and he said he's not coming across to Trinidad, but check out David. And that is how they found out about me. Species of stingless bees native to Trinidad and Tobago. We're not sure how many they have. Around 9, give or take. I believe they have a bit more than 9, but they haven't been properly recorded as being here. Some of them have only been recorded up to the genus level. So we know that this genus is here, like there is a genus that is only found in Tobago, and we have a member of that genus here. So we don't know if it's the same one as in Tobago or even a new species of that genus. Okay? What I'm going to cover, a lot of them are useless for keeping. They're just interesting. They're there. But this, I suspect, is something to keep for either pollination services in your crops or to produce a product that you could sell. You don't want to have 40 hives of a bee slightly larger than a flea that go into some flower that, you understand? So you're going to forget about all those waste time bees, so we're going to bring it down to about 4. 4 across. About 4 bees. Right. This is the bee that is called walnut or moco grande. Right, I have some of these not so hot, but then I have samples in bottles. Right, pass that around. That is the walnut. This produces the 2nd largest output of honey. Okay, they are very docile. They basically look like a honeybee, but they have no stripes on their abdomen. They're just a kind of cinnamon brown. Okay? Next slide. Of the Melopona, the one that has the most workers, it's the largest size. This is the Eric or Moco chiquite. This has little yellow bands on it, so you might mistake it for a honeybee, but it's a lot smaller, right? About 1/3 the size of a honeybee, and a much rounder abdomen. It's not pointy like a honeybee because, as Dr. Starr pointed out, they have no stingers, so there is no need for the abdomen to be elongate. All right. Next one. This is the big one, Amalthea. Right? He makes a big mud nest on the outside of a tree or a brick wall or whatever. All he needs to start a new colony is a tiny little cavity to sequester the queen. Once it's sequestered, the maiden, well, she's not really a maiden queen. She has been bred at this point in time, but her abdomen has not swollen. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever seen a queen termite. What a queen termite looks like with the big extended abdomen. They can't fly, so she will breed with the drones, and at that point in time she can still fly. The workers will take her to her new nest site, and they will sequester her in there, plaster it up to protect her, and then start to build a big mud nest on the outside. These have the most workers of any, and they produce the most honey. Right? And like everything else, all the others, they have pros and cons to each species. Okay. This is the Petiangel, Frisia maleta nigra. It used to be classed in the genus Trigona with the pagon, but it has that Trigona genus was a super genus long ago. Any little black bee was a Trigona. Right? Now they've all been split up. This used to be a Trigona, now it's Parthemona. The Nano Tribuna used to be Trigona. It's been split up. This is called Petiangel because they will not attack you. You cannot get them to land on you. Right? They are usually the bee that you'll see making a nest in a red block wall. Right? Easy to identify because they have a long thin abdomen like a jet. And they float. They float. When you tap on the red brick wall, they come out, make a cloud, and they will float. And you walk into the cloud, and they will just part and move around you. So they're like little angels. Hey. If you harass these, right? They don't have anything on the exterior of the island, just a hole. They make the big mud entrance, and these will attack you. These and the pagons will attack you. Right? Right, Nano Tribuna. Okay, this is Irai or Petit Pagon. This doesn't make any kind of honey at all. What this is used for away is it is getting to be one of these species big in places like Iceland and Greenland and Norway and Sweden, where they have greenhouses that are growing vegetables and fruits right through the dead of winter. Like in Iceland and Greenland, they have geothermal energy, right? So this is a tiny little bee that will crawl all over the flower. It does not take a lot of syrup to maintain a hive, and you get the pollinating services. So in a plant like a tomato, right, where it is self-pollinated, all you need for someone to do is walk down the row of tomatoes or peppers with a stick and rattle along the stems. You will get a dispersal of pollen on the flowers and you will get fruit set. But if you have a hive of Nano Tribuna, you will get much more fruit set. And it doesn't take much to feed a hive of Nano Tribuna. So this is not for producing a hive product as such like honey, but it is, if you can get them, divide them, there will be a market for them, because the gene pools in the whole countries in those greenhouses are very tight. You have someone gets one hive and splits it, so they're always looking for new blood because they're gonna get inbred and they're gonna start to get wing deformities, and so the outlook for this is to produce hives to ship away. Strangely enough, in a Brazilian Amerindian language, it means river of honey, which, and they were high on something, but they don't make a river of honey. Drop some. Yes, Partamona nigrio, this. This bee is a problem to keep. Very high quality honey, very high quality pollen, but it's a problem, so just forget it. Just forget it. Don't even think about it. This genus Partamona, called Boca de Sapo, or Boca de Sap in South America, frogmouth, is very prized in all South American countries, but even the experts with the different government extension offices cannot come up with a solution to the problem of why one person is successful in them and the other person is not. It's just a shot in the dark. You can try boxing the hive, but generally what happens is they fill out the box, and at about a year you will start to notice, when you first box them, they are really strong, they don't suffer with pests, they fill out the box, they fight off all the attacking pests when you first, and then after about a year you start to see activity go down, until the queen comes out of the box and starts to walk around. And when you open the box at that time, you'll notice there's nothing in there. And I know some guys in Trinidad that have tried, and as you see, Earl's box went dead, right? This I believe was boxed by a friend of ours called Robin, who has a lot of bees, and he can't get them to stay, right? And this and the others are the ones that I mentioned, are the ones possible candidates for commercial production. All the rest, forget about it. That's just. The only other thing I will mention is the bee that Professor Starr mentioned, Listrioletta, right? We're not sure about what species it is in Trinidad. I think it may be Listrioletta limon. This smells like citronella. Those are robber bees. You must know the hive, because it will make, just like this, it will make a big extended horn sticking out with false tubes extending from it, hanging down. And in certain countries in South America, it's called old man's nose. Like a big Michiku nose kind of thing, cartoon, right? Okay? Right? You cannot use their product because they have poison glands in their mandibles. If you try to drink their poison, drink their honey or eat their pollen, you will get violently sick. Serious vomiting and diarrhea. Okay, so those are the species that, yeah, Plebia tobagensis. Mirim, we don't, at that, they don't make any amount of honey. They are known to be in Tobago. That species of Plebia is not known to be anywhere on the mainland, but we have a Plebia here in Trinidad. right? There's another person that is connected with this project, Lena. I gave her samples and it was sent. They were sent. I identified them as preview. She sent them up to Canada. The person in Canada said yes, they are preview, but we don't know what species. So it might be a new species. It might be Trinbago. Bam. That's the bad one. That one counts. Right? You must know that. Right? Now these serve a purpose. These serve a purpose. Those are dead end tubes to catch a pest. So you see, they are a pest themselves, but they don't like pests. Teeth don't like pests. Okay? Okay, so go back to the beginning. Dr. Starr pointed out, you have a lot of variation in the melapona. They're not like honeybees. Right? They're not like honeybees. Certain strains of honeybee might be a little more docile than others. Certain might be a little better foraging in wet weather than others. But they're all the same species. These vary a lot. They vary a lot. So you have to decide what species you're going to keep and then gauge yourself in that species. Don't try and do everything. Specialize in one species. When you get the hang of it, try something else. Okay? Let me say something about the stingless bees before I get into the species. Honeybee honey is primarily a food. Any antiseptic properties honeybee honey has is mainly because of the level of sugar that is dissolved in it. So if you put it on a wound, it dehydrates the bacteria. It draws, it's like throwing salt on meat and salt in it. It draws the fluid out of the bacteria and the bacteria die. That is basically where honeybee honey gets its medicinal properties from. So technically, you could boil brown sugar down to a thick enough simple syrup and add some glucose, right? Or sour orange, so it enriches the syrup, so it produces glucose, so glucose does not crystallize as easily as sucrose, and you will get the same effect. Ordinary simple syrup, right? Stingless bee honey is primarily medicinal. You can eat it, it tastes good. Each species, the honey is markedly different to one another, very different, and it never changes. So what was he saying? But because stingless bees are stingless, they cannot defend themselves, right? Against an onslaught from before the African bees attack hives. If an African bee can get into the hive, they will wipe out everything in the hive and go with it. Then there's the Listrium aletta, and then there's ants. So what they do is they are cavity nesters. These make their own cavity. They make their mud nests on the outside. These are the pagan. The rest of them go inside a hollow tree and close up the hole with a mixture of honey, of wax, resin, dirt, and plant fiber. So if you have a big hole, like you have a toucan or a parrot going in there to nest, they will go there and seal that up. And that is called batumen. And they will leave one hole, tiny little hole, just large enough for one bee to pass at a time. So if the hive is under attack, they can close the hole with wax and resin and block out the invaders. Because of that, their honey is higher in water than honeybees. Honeybees, the honeycomb just hangs in the cavity, and the honeybees fan it to evaporate it and different things, and it gets very concentrated. Stingless bee hives are very humid because it's just at one little hole. So evolution has allowed them to come up with other ways to protect their honey from going bad. One way they do it is that they incorporate resins in with the wax. So the honey pots, nowhere inside the hive, right? Honeybees use resin in their hives, what they call propolis, and they will use it to block up holes getting into the hive in the boxes and things. So honeybee wax is nearly 100% wax. They have the little odd bit of propolis that they mix in by accident, as they, But nowhere in these hives you find something that is 90%, 95% wax. It all has a large amount of resin in it. And resin is generally antibacterial and antifungal. So when they make their honey pots, they don't make a comb like honeybees. They make little individual pots. So when the pots have resin and wax, it leaches into the honey. And although the honey is so watery that it will ferment, and in a lot of the bees it does ferment, it is protected by the leachates into the honey. And that is what makes the honey medicinal. And then also, certain bees have glands that, as I said with the lemon cab, they excrete a poison into what they see, but other bees excrete antibiotic properties into the nectar that they collect and put in the cups. And then another thing that they do is each bee, just like the carpenter ants, what we call bachata in Trinidad, they have a fungus that is theirs. You don't find it anywhere else but inside a bachata nest. A lot of the stingless bees have been found that they have their own yeast or bacteria. Some is fermented by yeast, some is fermented by bacteria, depending on the genus and the species. That is only found in the hives, and they ferment their honey. And that causes the honey to ferment and have a higher acid level than honeybee honey. But that higher acid level keeps out the bad bacteria and the bad funguses in it. So when you're getting into this, it is mainly a medicine. As I was explaining to one of these fellas, the pétillant gel, I sell pétillant gel honey, they only make 90 mils of honey for the year. I sell a teaspoon for $50. Eye drops, glaucoma, cataract, and something called leech in the eye, which is a bump that starts to go on the white of the eyes, right? And it does work. It does work. My brother has meat in the eye. It was growing until he started. I convinced him to start using it because it burns like hell. The first couple of times you put it in because it's high acid. It burns. But then you get accustomed to it. Your eye gets all red and you have your allergic reaction, you know, inflammatory reaction. But then after about the third time it calms down. And his has stopped growing. About 3 years now, it has stopped growing. The doctors wanted to operate. They had a gentleman just down the road from you at a horse farm that had bad glaucoma. And he would buy a little eye drop bottle like that was only about 1/3 full of liquid. Right? That was like $500 or $600 he was buying this thing to drop in his eyes morning and evening. And he stopped using it and he started using my honey. And his glaucoma never, he was using it for about 8 or 9 years and then he died. Because he was like 900 pounds. Okay, so this is the error. They never make a lot of workers, and they have an annoying trait that when food is scarce, the queen stops laying eggs. So you think your hive is dying. The hive just, so when you're not in the honey flow, your amount of workers will recede. Okay, and I suppose that is good in the sense that the hive will starve. I don't know if they kick out workers or what, but you just see the number of workers go down to maybe about 20, right? But then it's very hard to get them to feed artificially. You have to open up the hive and actually put the sugar syrup inside the hive for them to feed on it, to keep their numbers up. Because when they reduce their numbers and the honey flow comes in, then they leave behind. Everybody have workers there. So they now have to build up their numbers, right? So while it's a very docile bee, they never make large colonies and they reduce their number. You can keep their numbers up, feeding them artificially, but they will not, I have never gotten them to feed outside the hive. And opening up the hive outside of honey flow season, in the rainy season, is a problem because there is a pest that attacks you. Never touch one of these hives when raining. Right? So, okay? Pig one. If you could stand the licks, keep pig one. They're very good bees. They're very good bees. But depending on if you have crops, they're bad to keep around other crops because it seems they have a very short, either they have a very short proboscis or they're Trinidadians, they're lazy. Because they tend to cut the base of a flower and go in and steal nectar without having to pollinate the flower. Right? They especially do that with I've seen them doing that on passion fruit. They cut the base of the flower and they go in. Now people accuse these bees of also boring holes in citrus? I don't know. Because I have seen, I think they might be going in, because you can get 3, listen, you can get more honey out of these bees than any other bee. For the simple reason, they'll go to flowers and make a proper honey. You take that honey out, okay? And then, when the fruit is dropping and rotting on the ground, like pomerac and mango and stuff, they will go to that, chew up the fruit pulp, suck out the juice, and make honey with that. If you have them around trees that also have what are called extra floral nectaries, they will make honey with that. And then the people that keep this genus of bee in South America also feed them syrup. And they call that molasses, bee molasses. They don't call it honey, they call it bee molasses. And it is not just syrup. I don't know what they mix with it, but when it comes out, it's like a honey. So in the off season, you can just feed them ordinary cane syrup. That's very popular with a species in this genus in Brazil, Truculenta. That's even more aggressive than ours. It's bigger and more aggressive. Right? So you get several crops with this. The popping of the oranges, it might not be them because I have seen the big yellowtail cornbird, the European dollars. They land and they bust the orange and they start to pull out the guts.
I think it's probably Partamona. I've seen them attacking, making holes.
You've seen them making the holes? You've seen them making the holes?
I've seen them on the fruit, yeah. And of course they make a hole in the side of the fruit, and that fruit is ruined. I've seen them on Portugals.
Well, up where I am, I've never seen them, I've never noticed them boring the hole. I've seen them using the holes. I have seen the yellowtail, the big yellowtail cornbirds, the poggers, or the European dollars, they pop the hole and pull out the guts. And when the guts of the orange straight in front of the hole is what they will pull out, and then they get tired. They can't get into the surrounding sphere of the orange, and they leave, and then the bees come. So I think they might be secondary. I think the problem might be the European. Not to say that they're not going to mash up your oranges, but I think once I've never seen them on an orange biting and going through the rind, boring through the hole itself. I think they just taken advantage of what the European dollar has done.
Yeah, but they do it with mammy support. They would actually puncture the fruit and that small hole, only they could get them. And they would feed off that fruit.
Are you sure it's European dollar? European dollar?
No, not
You've seen them do it?
Yeah.
Mammy support.
Mammy support is the big brown fruit.
The hard one, like a cannonball.
Right. Well, it's not cannonball.
No, not cannonball. Like looking like a cannonball, big and round.
Yeah. But I'm on it. Does it have more than one pig on in Trinidad? Or?
Well, I think they have two, but I'm not sure. We only officially have one.
There's a small bee that is fly out and go in the wall and build a...
Okay, well they have several small black bees that go in walls and build nests.
Right. And then they have the big, from what we would normally call a pig one that would actually, well, we blame them for bursting the earth. It's the trust, right? That same big one would go in and
I never really see them. I know booty cut the mammy support when it falls, but
when it falls on the tree.
Alright, well maybe. Well here what, They're the same way that they will have learned to cut a hole in the base of the flower.
Yeah.
Right? They're adventitious. So maybe if something bores the fruit before and they realize they can go into the fruit, they have learned to do it on their own. But mammy support, I find that strange because that's a juicy fruit.
No, it's a thick skin.
Yeah, but it's not a juicy fruit. But anyway, they have strong mandibles.
Those of you who keep honeybees should know that the speaker is Hayden Sinanan, who is the chief of apiculture for the government.
Okay, I talked to you a long time on the phone. Right, okay. Good to meet you in person at last. Okay. Next. Petit gel. Right? Eye drops. Okay, now another thing with this is he is the main pollinator of Zabaca. Honeybees don't like Zabaca nectar. It has too much potassium. They will feed on it if they have nothing else. If you look at a Zabaca tree in bloom, you will see a honeybee come taste and leave. Okay, they are not going from one flower to one flower, from one to the other, and feeding and collecting nectar and building up and going back. They don't like Zabaca nectar. Zabaca is native to the New World. These are native to the New World. Honeybees are not native to the New World. They don't like it. If there's nothing else, but if you're a Zabaca farmer, this is the bee. right? When I started collecting these, I destroyed all my brother's zabuka trees on his land. All the branches broke off. Because if you really look at a zabuka tree in bloom, it has thousands of flowers. And then when it sets fruit, it has one zabuka here, one zabuka there. Why? The flight distance of this bee is very small. Right? I don't think they are going far. Right? So if they're not close to these zabuka trees, right, they don't have much for them to pollinate them. So if you want lots and lots of zabuka, keep these. And then the honey is very expensive. Right? But prop up, for God's sake, cut some bamboo and prop up every branch, because you will come out, all your branches will fall off and you'll have a stick. When I tell you, brothers start to quarrel. It took about 4 years for them to get back to a stage where they would, you know, the young green branches to get strengthening again. Yeah, this is the one, Nano Tribuna. That if you could get these and propagate them, you could probably get a market for them in the greenhouses in Northern Europe. Right? If you get 2 teaspoons of honey out of that hive, they get plenty. They're not. Right? Okay?
Do you have a design for a hive for these?
Just a box. Just a box like this. Because what you're looking for is a hive. You're not looking to design anything that'll be easy for harvesting the products.
Good.
No, each species is different. Certain species make a nasty jumble, like a bunch of grapes, actually brewed. And then other species make pancakes, right? Layers of brood comb. They produce brood comb stacked on top of the other pancakes. Now, the thing with a lot of these bees, not everyone, but a lot of these bees, they have several queens. And each layer of brood comb has at least 1 queen cell. So if you have 6, you just take 3 and put it in a new box, and they start a new colony. With the jumble, and the queen cells will be larger into the edge of the pancake. With the ones that make the jumble of brood cells, you can't tell. It's just slightly bigger than the others, and they will only make 1 or 2 queens in honey flow season, when there's a lot of food coming in, they're going to make a new colony. Right? So the petit angel is the honey that is favored over the jatai, and it has a much larger range in the jatai. It goes from Mexico right down to northern Argentina, and they have same genus but different species and subspecies. The problem on the mainland was nobody could successfully split them, because when you have the ball of grapes and you split it in half, you might get a queen cell, you might not. So what could happen is you have one, you split it, and you have none. Because you damage the queen in the split it, the 1 queen losing your original cell, and, you know. So I kind of came up trial and error on how to propagate the petit angel. And I have guys, through Facebook, I've given information to guys in Mexico and stuff on growing, because it had to be what you found. If you found 4 hives, you go and you bust a hole in somebody's red brick hole in the house and you keep a hive, when you get a hive there, it's what you find. You couldn't propagate beyond that. I kind of came up with it.
David, Nano Tribuna nests entirely inside.
Yeah.
Not exposed. And if you want it just for pollination, if you don't care about getting into it, I wonder if a good nest box would be a length of bamboo with 1 hole.
Yes. But I have never gotten them to go into bamboo.
Okay, no, neither have I.
I hear people, no, I make a lure, a multi-species lure, that I can get them to go into boxes like this, right? But I hear on the internet people talk about baiting bamboo pods and stuff, and no. And here what, on YouTube you will see it. Guys bait, you see these big square plastic bottles with the hands on top, they get the soap in and now? Guys baiting and setting those out and getting melapona species, the big ones like the honeybees in South America, and they just cut it open and take it out from that. Never had any luck with stuff like that here in Trinidad. Never. But I use these. A wooden box, you put the lure in the wooden box and you put it around existing hives, and in the dry season, when they're looking to make new hives, they will go out and search and find this. Right? They'll find this. Okay? So those are the bees. Forget about that. That's this. You could try, and you might be lucky. And if you're lucky, because as I said, the Stingless bee honey is very acidic. Their honey is very, very sweet. Very, very sweet. And crystal clear. And their pollen. They don't have powdery pollen like honeybees. They mix honey and pollen and put it in their pots, in the individual pots. And as with all the other stingless bees, their honey is generally very acidic compared to honeybee honey. And that is one thing that is used to preserve it, the high acid level. Their honey is very sweet, and their pollen is extremely sweet, right? And walnut pollen, when you try to eat it, that thing sour. It's like amrak. You know amrak, the cucumber, cucumber, but make that like a Valencia already. Right, very, very sour. But their honey is all. So it's good, but you have to be blessed by God, otherwise you're not going to be able to keep it.
Is this a case that you should try not to box it, but to create a light environment?
If you don't box it, how are you going to get the honey?
No, I mean like, it thrives better in its natural environment, right? Is it a case that you look at the means by which you can have it in its natural environment?
No, well, you don't want to worry about these in a natural environment, because all these stingless bees are cavity nesters. All are cavity nesters. All of them are entire cavity nesters. So they have to find a cavity that could encompass their whole height, right? And as the interior, you use the interior of a tree, right? And if that tree stands for 200, 300 years, the hive is going to keep on going, because as queens get old or get sick, new queens have been made all the time. And if they don't need any new queens, it's the wrong season or they don't have enough food, they will just kill the queens. They will cut open the queen cells and pull them out, and I've seen that in my eyes. They pull them out and pelt them away. And as the interior of the tree rots, they extend the hive. And on an old tree, you can have quite a large store of honey and pollen. Okay? But this and the pagan, you don't have to worry. Because all they need is a little hole to put the queen when she first leaves home. And before she was swollen with eggs. When she can still fly. She comes out from the her original nest, she breeds with several drones, and then she goes back and she gets a lot of workers, and they leave and they go to start a new colony, and then when they put her in the new colony, then her abdomen starts to grow. Once that starts happening, she cannot fly. So you could burn the tree, chop down the tree. They cannot. I have to ask you afterwards what species they will abscond, because none of our species here in Trinidad can abscond. Their abdomens get way too big. They're like a termite queen. Termite queens are just like that. They're huge abdomens dragging behind them inside the nest. Okay? So you don't have to worry about these, because this species, these are common. All the others are getting rare for several reasons. One reason is they're cutting down primal forests that have hollow trees. Okay? And then they have trees that tend to be hollow. Like a tree we have here called Louvain Mata. That's a big tree in the forest that you can tell it's a Louvain Mata because it tends to send up suckers from underneath along the trunk of the tree. Okay? That is because it knows it's hollow and the time is coming when it's going to snap. Right? But in propagated land, all those trees are cut out. And all those trees that tend to be hollow, they are cut out. So that is one reason all the other bees are getting scarce. This is everywhere. One of their favorite places to start hives is in a pine, in the roots of a wild pine in a tree. They go there and they start the hive, right? And a lot of the time, what might come on and make a neighbor hive with them is the ant that they call I don't know the taxonomic Haliquel. You know, when you look on orange trees, you see the long ants nest hanging down like a solid.
That's Azteca.
That's the Azteca. No. I also the one that was Azteca was the one on the Guacano, that lived inside Guacano.
Well, no. Yeah, I think those are that's a different Azteca.
Oh, the same genus.
Yeah, but it's the same genus.
Okay.
So I mean, they're very, very distinctive.
Right. Yeah.
They can't be
yeah.
genus.
There is also another ant I know it as an orchid ant. If they make their nest in an orchid root, a lot of the time you'll have this ant. They have a little round, whitish, sometimes shiny abdomen, and when you squeeze them, I find it has like a perfumey smell.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it
Has
does.
a-
I like
you
it.
know it?
I like a lot, so I know what you're
Right.
talking
It
about.
has a perfume. I find it smells like perfume. Other people tell me, oh, David, that's
No,
the
some
crazy.
people
That's
say-
it stinks.
Some people say it's stinky. Some people say it stinks, but I agree
Yeah.
with you. It has a nice.
Right,
it
but
has
don't,
a nice-
they tend to nest in, they don't nest in the roots of wild pines, they nest in orchid roots. But these will go and set up their mud nest in the roots of a wild pine or an orchid and make this entire mud thing on the outside. Just once they have a little place to hide their food. The others at the front. So you don't have to worry about these getting rare. They're everywhere. They're the most common. The Patamona and the Trigona amalthea are the most common of all our stingless bees. As people are now, other species used to be very common because of red brick walls, unplastered red brick walls in houses. People plastering red brick walls now, and they're getting very scarce. And they don't like to nest in concrete block walls because concrete block walls have vertical spaces. Red brick walls have lateral spaces, right? So in rainy season, the bottom of the concrete wall will take water, and the nest will drown, right? So you don't have to worry about these. They're everywhere. They will do their pollination services for you, right? The one that you want to put in a box out of these is the Patamona amalthea. Sorry, the Trigona amalthea, right? Because they make a lot of honey. They make a lot of honey. If you know what you're doing, you can take the bite in. I would advise you all. If you want to do that, take a bee soup. Get a bee soup. I'll touch on this. They have a lot of high products that these stingless bees produce, more or less depending on the species. There's your honey, which is primarily medicinal and will sell for at least 3 times what honey sells for, right? And the Melapona trinitatis and the Trigona amalthea produce the most, right? If you have a Melapona hive in a box and you have harvesting every year, it's not going to make that amount of honey. You might get a liter, liter and a half, 2 liters, depending on how productive the area is from a hive. But if you find a hollow tree with a nest that has been in it for 50 to 100 years, I've seen guys get 2, 3 pigtail buckets of honey out of a tree. Yeah. Up in Brasso in Highwoods, I have a friend up there that goes in Highwoods and gets the honey, right? And goes, but you know. So there's the honey, there's the wax, the cerumen, which you can't use to make candles, but it makes an exceptional dubbing. You know what dubbing is? It's like shoe polish, but more waterproof than shoe polish. And the reason it makes exceptional dubbing is because of the resin in it, right? So it makes a very, right? Certain species will put pure resin in certain parts of the hive. But you can take out the pure resin and I suppose experiment to make varnishes and lacquers, right? Okay. Then there's the pollen. There is a big market. I really can't tell you if you can digest it. Dr. Starr said there will be no proof that humans can digest pollen, but people want to buy it. So if you want to buy it, you sell it, right? If you want to buy it, you sell it. Yeah, well, look at it. You're not gonna see a junkie in the alley shipping up on some pollen. Right? Okay? And it's not going to do them any harm. It might make them twist up their face and into salt. But other than that, okay, it's native beekeeping. And a lot of our trees rely on these bees instead of Apis mellifera bees. That was what evolved alongside our native trees. And while Apis mellifera will pollinate a lot of our trees because they're generalists, a lot of our trees, as I have come to realize, like these avocado, they don't already like. And then our native stingless bees will go to trees that are not there, are not native to Trinidad, but actually evolved in a place with a lot of stingless bees. So where it comes from, like the rambutan, stingless bees, our stingless bees love rambutan. I have a friend with a field of rambutan in Brasso, and every stingless bee imaginable, and some that I know have not been identified. visiting the rambutan trees. And when those rambutan, when they bear like slope on trees, and when you walk into that field, it really runs up the African bees, peacock and everything, right? Jet, red jet, cobalt, because they have all different insects in the flowers, and jet snap each other, they're walking in the right? So you have to, if you just want to get into honey, a large amount of honey, all the hard work has been done for honeybees already. So get your license to keep honeybees, keep honeybees. But these, they're supposed to be there, honeybees are supposed to be there. And you can keep them in your house. You cannot keep honeybees close to your house none of the African bees. Right? These bees you can actually keep inside your house with the core of the hive. You can keep them, let's say, at your house, cabinets in your house, you have really blocks above the cabinets in the kitchen. You can put them on, take on your pot, put them there, put the whole place between these blocks, and they will come and go because of the stingless. When you first start to keep them in the neighborhood over time, don't after a while. The first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year, the five to 10 you over your wall and go in your hive. Inside the house and stay. Once night comes, they don't come out for like honeybees. If African bees can see light, they will come out in night examination and put your hiding space and away from people because they go to street lines, they go to people light to their houses and they have us at African bees in the neighbor house. These, when they go in, they lock their door right there. They have a clock. They have their alarm clock and they set because you could put on enough light to do wrong. They're not coming out to do wrong. Right? When it's 6:30, 6:15, they come out. That's the introduction. Who has the bottle? Alright, these are, this is the gel.
One last thing I would try to do.
The export. Start the colonies. Oh! If you want to get into this, a very good thing, before you start selling honey, is start the colonies. Because colonies are hellishly hard to kill. Okay, there are not a lot of people keeping them. Out of the number of people keeping them in Trinidad, the subset of people that are willing to even try to split colonies. I have gone to people and I will teach them, no, read that right. Read it right. Right? You have a couple of people splitting, they don't want to sell. Right? So if you can produce colonies to sell, I see no reason why I used to try and make up a hive of tequila gel, one hive available for people who want to sell it. One hive. But I know again, I'm still difficult. And I will select a few out. And I don't find 2,000 for tequila gel hive. It's a bad deal. At $50 a teaspoon, 90 mils a year, and you can get one split guaranteed from your hive a year. Naturally, that's when you make sense. Right? I don't find that the first year the one hive makes 2, the second year the 2 hives make 4, and I don't find that they have certain people that kind of they don't like everything for free. Right? They hung it on quick, and then when you tell them it's $2,000. But then you have people.
You can keep your hive, so if you're splitting them, do they need their own space?
No. The only man you have to look out for is the big one. He's a bully. So the one that makes a new nest, he will split and go with half or so of their colony. And what happens, the daughter hive will stay in contact with the mother hive for a month or 2, carrying food stocks back and forth. The big one and these, because they just need a small cavity to sequester the female, they go across with the queen and like maybe about 30 workers. So the mother hive never gets the workers. A pagan hive always, I've seen young pagan hives starting with just like a dozen or 2 dozen workers, and they start to build little tiny pagan, and then have a big hive after a couple of years. Right? So each hive is different. They will produce different amounts of honey, different types of honey. You're going to need different husbandry techniques because the interior design that they use is different, right? You're going to need different box designs for each species, but there are a lot of benefits of technical stingless bees for food. Pretty regular with time maybe. Yes.
I have 3 questions. The first one is, what is the lifespan of some of these stingless bees?
Well, individually,
Well, if you want to say queen, worker,
I have no idea.
Well, I don't know, queen probably a small number of years, the workers, not very many weeks. They work themselves to death.
The hive is, if your hive dies, the hive, because the queen cannot abscond, you can get a honeybee hive, everybody leaves. And then you have an empty box, for whatever reason. If you go and you pump enough smoke into a honeybee box, the whole hive will leave. Because they think that a fire is coming, and that is why smoke is used in working honeybees. They think a fire is coming, so all the workers start to guzzle as much honey as possible in preparation for absconding, because that's the only way they can carry honey in their stomach, right? They can't go do buckets of honey, right? So, and then when they drink all the honey, they get honey drunk. When we big Christmas dinner, you start going, you're gonna go and lie down and sleep all that 15 days, right? So it's the same thing, but that doesn't work with stingless bees because it absconds, so smoke doesn't work. Just smoke will agitate the trigona, and smoke will just make the melapona go inside the hive and die. So theoretically speaking, a hive will last for eternity as long as the cavity lasts. If the tree lasts for 1,000 years with a bristlecone pine or something, it could last for 2,000 years or 3,000 years, they will just keep renewing their queens. Right? If your hive dies, there's something wrong. Sickness or Listeria got to them, which I doubt in this because these are very aggressive to Listeria. Something caused them to die. Right? Too much humidity, not enough humidity. Right?
next question is repeat.
What food?
What I asked you earlier, so
Flowers, like ordinary bees. It's just that
they're good, bad types, KFC, sweetie, Socoman syrup.
Listen, if they go in and feed in, if you can get them to feed on something outside the nest, more power to you. Right? The Tribuna will go to anything, anywhere. Right? If you leave some jam out on your kitchen table and they have a pig on there somewhere, they will come in. Good. Okay? Other bees, I can't get them to feed outside of the nest. I can't get them to feed in stations outside of the nest.
What is plebea called in Tobago?
A sugar bee.
Sugar fly.
Sugar fly, yeah.
And see, because if you're dining outside and you got sugar on the table, don't come to it.
Yeah. I remember as a boy going summer holidays with my parents, the packets of sugar on the table. We go to the restaurant were packed by Siki Burry banana quits and the little sugar fly bees because you couldn't keep the cup of sugar packets out on the table. As you came and sat at the table, the waiter would put it there. And invariably, whilst you're sitting there for breakfast, little Siki is coming down, right? Because that's a big thing for the tourists, right? And they come in, they're not taking you one. One time you see the sugar packets come out, and they bust the sugar packet and they start to feed. And the bees will just, from the time they pop the packet, little sugar fly, right? Crawling all over the Siki, right? So it doesn't matter. The bee, as Professor Starr said, if it is something they like, they will feed on it. If it's good for them, they will feed on it. Right? If they have a dead dog, they're not going to feed. Although they are a group of vulture bees related to our pavon in South America, they feed on carcasses, they don't go to flowers. We don't have them here. Right? But they know how to handle it. And that bee also produces valuable products that has been traditionally prized by the natives, and it is only recently that Western people realized that they have good products. They feed on the flesh of dead animals, right? They don't go to flowers, they don't make honey, they don't store pollen.
I want to find out, there's certain like
environments that are too dry for our stingless bees?
No,
No.
too wet.
Okay. Too wet.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Stingless bees are more prolific in the south, where you get a harder dry season. Up north in the mountains,
Yeah.
they're a lot more susceptible to certain pests.
Okay.
Right?
Because like where from the corridor, you can see like very dry, so the rain shower. And there's a lot of fires as well. So it's...
Yeah, that is a seasonal dry forest on the corridor side of the island, right?
Yeah.
I am up on Kumak, Toku side. That is rain all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Stingless, there is a pest with stingless bees called a forest fly, which likes, you do have a touch of stingless bee hive in rainy season,
yeah.
right? Right. So and then certain species are very susceptible to them, certain genus, and then even certain species within certain genus are more susceptible than other, like the walnut. When you have to be very careful with the walnut hive because the forest flies just walk straight past the walnut. They can't do that with Petit Angel. With Petit Angel is more their size, and these grab them and throw them out, right? So, as I said, it's not one big clump. Dealing with all different species, and not even species, like the Favosa and the Trinitatis are two species in the same genus. But then you have Pagon, which is another genus, and Petit Angel, which is another genus, and then they're nothing alike. They're nothing alike. So you have to specialize. And when you get one going, sit down and think about it. And think what you want, what you're looking to do, what you have growing on your land, and then when you master that species, you can move on to the next, and move on to the next. But it's not just one thing like honeybees. They're very different, very, very different. Right? They're very different. Okay, anything else?
How do you treat the forest fly?
Well,
I know that's my next thing.
yeah, that later. You have to put traps and stuff. You have to handle them in the right season. You have to use traps. Once you split a melapona hive, you have to be in that hive every day. Open it out, right? And clean it out, right? So the maggots, taking out the maggot, otherwise it'll just go down, right? So you have to be in it every day until you stop seeing them. Because what the bees will do is when the forests get in and lay maggots inside the brood comb, they will take out the maggots and put it in a midden. But then the maggots will just crawl back and feast and then they'll eat out all the food. So you gotta go in with a little cutting knife and scrape it out every day, twice a day, until everything's settled down. Because when you're taking out the pancakes and any damaged pancake will give off a smell, will pull in the forest flies. Any brood cell is broken open, that smell before it's coming. So until the bees destroy those broken brood cells, right? Pull out the damaged grub and clean it off. Once everything is cleaned up, then the forest will stop winning. Right? But you have to be in it every day. Certain like the melapona, once you put a melapona hive, you have to do that every day, twice a day, every day. The Petit Angel is pretty high on you. Right? Or these. I have boxed several of these hives and I never go back. They're very aggressive and they're small like the forest flies. So
Talk about the fungus. What batrax make as feed. Ground bees. Any of these bees live actually in the ground?
no. Species of Tribuna from Central America. It means shit fire. What it does is shit fire. Kakafogo.
Fire shitters.
Fire shitters.
Kakafogo.
Yeah. They're a Tribuna. They don't sting, but what they do is they scrape and then they spit acid into the scrape on your skin. So they're stinging you without stinging you.
They're very nasty.
Yeah.
They'll put you to play.
They nest in the ground. And what melapona keepers do in Central America is they box the hive in a ceramic pot and bury the ceramic, an unglazed ceramic pot, like a red kind of terracotta flower pot, so that when it's buried in the ground, it's moist, the ambient moisture can go through. And then they bury it and they cover, it's a pot specially made, right, for the bees. They put it there, they put the cover on, and the cover has a little tube coming out the top. And it's buried into the ground and they cover it up, and they will like bury it near the post in their bee house. Okay? And that sticks out there, and that they protect the bees from listeriomatter and from people coming to see bees.
Sustainable farming and all of that. If it had any connections to these.
Oh, Paul Stamets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He has shown, he's a big mushroom man.
Yeah.
I know Stamets, one of my heroes. But he showed that honeybees suffering from hive collapse were going to compost piles and feeding on mycelium in compost piles. Yeah. And what he has a thing, and a lot of beekeepers now are thinking that a lot of the problems with hive collapse and different diseases like varroa mites and things are because the hives that honeybees are kept in are too clean. And that's not their natural home. Right? While honeybee hives, if they go in a log, there will be a lot of detritus inside the log cavity, like rotten wood and stuff that is falling down there. And if you go through that, you're going to find a lot of mites and airwigs and other insects that are colonizing the hive. If you open a stingless bee hive, right, you're going to find lots of mites walking on little white things. And if you look at them through a magnifying glass, they look like a little garapa. And they're cleaning the hive. They're supposed to be there. So what Stamets is saying is he believes that the stress from these aseptic hives that have to, that honeybees are kept in, and the environment that they're kept in now, and all the chemicals, it's a perfect storm that's building up. And what the honeybees are using from the mycelium is they're getting antibiotics. Because the amount of stress that they're on in the hives, they're getting infected with different diseases, and they're going out there and self-doctoring. That's what Stamets says. Right now, I think he is doing research to see exactly what mycelium they're feeding on, and he's trying to produce a fungal product to sell to the beekeepers. You ever heard about Stamets? Paul Stamets? Yeah. He's trying to produce a fungal product to sell to the. All right. I was telling Shane, so that's when you were me last time, that I had walnut hive. Remember I said my walnut hive was dying? Right. I moved the hive because my brother wanted to go and get some stuff, and I was in the, and I moved the hive, and what had happened is the plywood shelf it was on had two mites, and they ate out through the bottom of the box. And as I moved the hive, all the honey, they had eaten right through. So as I moved the hive, the little skin of wood just ripped out the honey pots. So I had to rebox the hive. Rains falling. I reboxed the hive. They got forage flies. I was in the hive every day, right? Seeing about the hive, taking out the forage fly maggots. I saved the hive. The hive was good. During that period of time, I was feeding the hive every day, because, right? Feeding the hive every day, because when you rebox the hive, you don't put any honey you don't put any of the pots back in the hive from the original box, because the broken and damaged pots attract the forage flies. So I was feeding them on syrup. It was only the brood I moved. Once they cleaned up their brood and the forage, they stopped bringing maggots out to the brood, I stopped going into the box. And I thought all was good, right? Because they had amassed a lot of nectar. They had made new pots on the side of the box. They had amassed a lot of the simple syrup I was feeding them into the pots. All was good. About a month later, I went back to check it. From having maybe about 300 bees, because it was a small box, right? It was maybe like 15, 20 bees. Oh boy, now I know there was a problem with the lemon carp attacking my Frisium my Petit Angel, and even though the hive wasn't killed, the hive would collapse at a later date. Sometimes they will completely wipe out a hive. But if you catch it in time and you can move it, and move it back there 2 days, what you do is you move it to a new location, feed them in that new location, open it up at night and put syrup in there for them and close it. And any of the lemon carp inside the hive, you put a piece of mosquito net over the door, the Petit Angel will overpower them and kill them. And then you carry it back 2 days later. And the lemon carp will come now and, oh, where the hive is gone? And it will move. Right? So they stop attacking that hive. They survive, but they start to get weak. Well, I had plenty Petit Angel. I had one walnut. It was given to me by a friend. I said, well, it's do or die. So I did, and it didn't die. Right? What I did is I read over the years, beekeepers in Europe and have said different things mixed into simple syrup are tonics for bees, honeybees. Nothing has been proved except, as far as I know, one paper that was written by some people in Romania, okay, put in stinging nettle tea as the base for the simple syrup. Now I know this, we don't have stinging nettle in Trinidad, we have wood nettles. It's a closely related family to the European, the true stinging nettle. Now I know our nettle, what we call zooty here in Trinidad. That makes a very good bhaji. I love it. I'm a bhaji person, right? I'm a bhaji person, right? Once I have rice, something to flavor my pigtail, salty, something, and bhaji, I go to it. Now I'm eating out there, but I love my bhaji. So I said, well, okay, right? When this happened, I made a mixture of stinging nettle, garlic, peppermint, lemon verbena, our fine leaf thyme we use at Christmas for garlic pork, which has a higher level of thymol than true thyme. And thymol is an antifungal, right? And I made my concoction and I started feeding in that. I said it has to be some sort of pathogen. And they worked with it, they started to build the numbers again. Right? But according to the information out of South America, there is no disease that can be transmitted from honeybees to stingless bees. They tried spraying several species with foul brood and different honeybee diseases. They would take hives that died from different honeybee diseases, blend them up, add water, blend them up, filter them out, and then spray different stingless bee hives, and nothing affected them. Nothing affected them. So this has to be, so what came out of South America from what I read, the only disease that goes from stingless bees to honeybees or from honeybees to stingless bees is a mite, a straw mite that causes farmers itch. From dealing in straw and hay and with your horses, and right, like something must be something like a bec rouge. So if you're handling hives that are infected with Latin honeybees, and then you go to a stingless bee hive, or you rest your implements on the ground, it can go from hive to hive. And there are mites that will wipe out. But as for pathogenic diseases, bacteria or funguses, they haven't found anything. But we have something here. We have something here. Right? But giving them a strong bushy, well, garlic is high in sulfur. Garlic is high in sulfur compounds, and the different aromatic plants are usually, the aromatic oils are, so you make a strong syrup when you give it to them. Right? I don't know, that's just anecdotal, but it worked. My hive is alive.